Hello and welcome to Eco Girl in a Modern World. My name is Shelley and my channel is dedicated to talking about ways to be more environmentally friendly in a modern context. Now, I appreciate everyone's patience. You're probably like, oh my goodness, you've been gone for like a long time. I did have to take a break from the channel for a little while. I did have a loss in my family, so I needed to travel. And actually today's video is going to be talking about the way that I traveled and the amount of carbon that that was calculated from my method of travel. So this episode we're going to talk about carbon calculation. Now, what had happened was I decided to drive. I know a lot of people fly. I had a traumatic event happen to me years ago, decades ago, where I really prefer not to fly. I can fly, but I don't like it. It produces an amount of anxiety with me that is not healthy. and again, it stems from a really bad trip that I had. And to be honest, a lot of the reports that we have for flying safety are not very reassuring. So if I do decide to go that method of travel again, it will probably be in the future. But I did decide to go ahead and travel to drive, so I rented a rental car to go see my mom and to help with, the passing of a family member. And what it turned out to be is it turned out to be 2 trips, and it was so it was driving, to and from a certain amount of miles. And what I decided to do was I was going to go ahead and determine how much carbon that those trips produced. And so, of course, it was 2 different cars, but I rented a car, and the different cars got pretty much the same gas mileage. It's usually about 32 to 35 miles per gallon. So we're going to kind of guesstimate to calculate. And the most recent trip, it was this little candy apple red car, and even though it was a little bit of a sportier model, it was a Honda, and it was really good on gas. So that is a testament to a lot of car makers nowadays. They are getting much better with the way that the fuel efficiency on vehicles and the gas emissions are much better. Also, one of the benefits that I love about traveling via car is that you actually get to see the world. When you fly, you fly directly into the airport, and it's not like you really get to see the cities, the stops. And when I drive, even if it's just doing a pit stop at a rest area, or if I'm stopping at a big conglomerate gas stop like Buc-ee's or something, you really get to see people, and you get to see these small towns. On the way back, I actually stopped by a wonderful little mom and pop gas station that had a coffee shop in it, and it's beautiful how much nature and natural beauty is in the United States. So many people talk about traveling to Europe for vacation and stuff, but there's so much to see right here in my country, and I think that's one of the benefits of traveling. And so I also, as I'm traveling, I also got to see a lot of, it got me thinking a lot about, if I'm creating this much carbon just driving to and from to see my mom, what kind of carbon is other vehicles like tractor trailers and things like that? What is the actual carbon footprint of when you are shipping things to, stock of materials, like if you're bringing groceries to the grocery store, or you're bringing stock to retail distributors. What is it more carbon or less carbon than flying? And that was amazing to see. So what I did is I decided to go ahead and do kind of a carbon calculator, and there's a wonderful website called My Climate, and it's just myclimate.com, and you can put in your destination. So what I did is I said, okay, one way it was about 12 hours and about 826 miles. And I rounded up to 850 miles just because, you add in a couple stops. Sometimes when you stop at a hotel or something like that, that's a few miles additional off the beaten path. It's not a straight shot. And then the My Climate or calculator, it calculates in kilometers, which is it's a UK kind of measurement. So I went ahead and I calculated 850 miles into kilometers, and it rounded out to be about 1,367 kilometers. So what I did is I took that math and I rounded up. I said, okay, about 1,375 kilometers times 4, going there and back 2 times. So that came out to be about 5,500 miles, or 5,500 kilometers. And then what I did is I calculated. Now, this is one other thing, is that when you type it in, it's going to want to know how much gas per liter. So 1 liter of gas per 100 kilometers, or 1 liter of gas per 100, measures of distance. And so that was one other calculation I had to do, is 100 kilometers equals to 235.2 US miles per gallon. So here, I took that calculation. Also, I said, okay, if you're going if you get approximately 30 miles to the gallon to 100 kilometers, that equates to about 7.84 liters. So when I finally calculated all of this, and I went ahead and I labeled the fuel as petrol or petroleum. That's another factor, is that sometimes gas can be biogas. It can be a portion of ethanol, which is corn based. So it's not all petroleum. It isn't all just regular gas. It can have a little bit of biofuel, but I went ahead and I just called it petrol for the sake of it. And so the total amount of carbon was about 1.8 tons. So, going that whole distance to and from, it was about 1.8 tons. And again, I think of it in a sense of, it was a trip that I needed to take. Plus, I got to see a lot of things. It was really nice. When I got to my mom's house, her house is on a lake, and she has like sandhill cranes. She sees a lot of wildlife. There's some really rare birds that, she gets turkeys and squirrels and ducks and geese and herons and sandhill cranes, and so just being there is very tranquil, and the different types of birds are just amazing to watch, and then just again stopping in the cities. And it was funny, one of the trucks that I saw, one of the tractor trailers, the tractor trailers get real creative, but one of the tractor trailers actually had it had one of those bands over the windshield that had lights, like you could put messages there. But this tractor trailer that I saw, when you zoomed in, it looked like eyes. It looked like, like the spooky eyes you would see in like Scooby-Doo or, at Halloween time. And it was funny. It reminded me, if you've ever seen the 1980s movie, it's based on a Stephen King novel called Maximum Overdrive. It's about like a comet that hits the earth, and it makes all of the trucks and vehicles come to life, kind of get possessed. But it was fun. It was just like, as you're driving down the highway, listening to the radio, listening to podcasts. That's another really nice thing, is you actually hear the local radio stations. So you get to hear the music that's playing, and it's all types of music. It's country music, it's gospel music, it's, talk radio, it's sports radio. And it's just, it really kind of places you in, it gives you a sense of the culture. But 1.8 tons is a lot, and who knows, maybe I calculated it wrong. Maybe that calculated more than what it really was. But for one person traveling a pretty fair distance down the eastern seaboard, that's quite a bit of carbon. And it's funny, my little red car it was weird. I'm so used to driving my car. I have an old Toyota, but driving the new Honda on the dashboard, it actually gauges me. It was judging me in coffee cups. I know that's so strange. I was like, okay, why are you judging me in coffee cups? But I was thinking about that. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to see how you're judging me in carbon tons. But but that was apparently you could turn that feature off. But a lot of new cars have a lot of bells and whistles, and it just makes me wonder. Same thing with trucking. You're moving inventory, but you in essence have one person traveling in the vehicle. And of course, it's that's why we always on this channel and everywhere else that we encourage you to carpool too, because if you've got more people, your miles per gallon might go down a little bit, but you're transporting more with those miles per gallon. So of course, taking public transit or carpooling when you can is saves in carbon. It makes that carbon go farther because you're transporting more people. So my trip there to and fro was 1.8 tons. And what really got me thinking about this is because while I was down there was quite a few there were quite a few events in the news. A little while back, I had talked about, I think it was like about a year and a half ago, I had talked about how Starbucks, which is a coffee company, and you got to bear in mind, coffee is grown in a certain area. It's grown in southern countries near the equator, and even them with the change in climate, it is getting hotter. Where coffee, it's getting harder to grow in areas where the coffee plants are planted because it is getting hotter. The climate change is affecting that. So it's more than just any other factor that's making the price of coffee go up. It is definitely climate change as well. And of course, traveling by, buying products that need to be flown. I've talked a million times about the life cycle of a t-shirt and how it's flown around the world, creates a lot of carbon. But there was Starbucks, I buy my coffee from Starbucks too. I think everyone does. They got a new CEO, and the new CEO got a really huge deal. They got paid a lot of money. They got paid a lot in stock. Was given a lot of stock, which has a lot of value. But in addition, the new CEO was given a private jet. And the new CEO apparently, he used to be the CEO of Chipotle. So he was renowned for creating functionality within that business, almost like an assembly line, how to get it fast and convenient, and so my biggest concern when they took this guy on was like, okay, are they going to be paying my baristas a living wage? Are they going to be browbeating them to try to get them to be more productive? Is this it's one thing to make things more productive, it's another thing to really make it a inhospitable working environment. So that was a concern for me too. But the other concern is that they're giving this new CEO a private jet, and he lives in California. And of course, the headquarters for Starbucks is in Seattle, Washington. So they basically, in essence, said, okay, you don't have to move from California. You can commute to Washington State from California, which is about 1,000 miles one way. So there was a lot of talk about this. It's like, okay, I'm here calculating my carbon emissions for doing a mandatory drive to see my family member as there for bereavement, but how much carbon is this CEO with one person and the staff of the plane commuting to work 1,000 miles one way and then 1,000 miles back, right? And I'll post a video that talks. This was on the news. It's not to knock the person, but the other thing is that I'm not sure if they gave up the private jet. It was in the news, and then you didn't hear much about it. I think there probably are still commuting to and fro. So that raises a question. Okay, how much preference are you being given to just fly to work? Now I know Starbucks I did see a couple of things that looked good with Starbucks, like about a year ago or 6 months ago, I started seeing compostable cups. So instead of, I have a video that talks about, reusable or single-use cups, check it out. A lot of cups go into a landfill, and it takes some time. I think it takes about 7 to 9 years for a cup like that to break down. So to switch to compostable cups, it was really nice, and honestly, honestly, the beverage didn't taste any different. But I saw those cups being used for like a couple of months, but now recently I'm seeing them go back to the regular cups with the plastic lids. So I was a little disappointed to see that. I don't know if that was a cost-cutting measure because the cost of coffee is going up, and just, it's got to be reset. If you're flying 1,000 miles commuting to work, that is going to contribute to the global warming. That's going to affect the way the coffee grows. So you're being your own problem if you're doing that. The other big event, and we've got to talk about the elephant in the room here, is that there was a big, huge wedding for the owner of Amazon. Jeff Bezos had what was it? It was like a $12 million wedding. I'm not sure what the final price tag was but it was in Venice. And of course, Venice is a completely water. It's all of the commerce, all of the movement of everything in Venice is done by the waterways. Everything comes through the canals. They don't have roads. And so when you have a major event like a celebrity wedding there, you are going to be shutting down their method of getting goods and services. So the people who live there, they can't get, bread, milk, water, they can't get the normal necessities of life because you're shutting the city down. So that was one consideration. That's probably what you saw if you've been watching the news. A lot of the citizens of Venice were upset. The other thing is that that wedding alone had over 90 private jets. And here again, we were talking about a private jet commuting to and from, California. Those over 90 private jets, and the Kardashians probably carpooled. They maybe had 4 to 7 of them in the same plane, but then 7 people plus the staff of the plane flying from California to Italy. That's a lot of carbon. And plus, you're taking over the airports with just, it was, I think, 94, 95 private jets. And the other thing is that Jeff Bezos, for a fact, has a 417 square foot yacht. And so that's a carbon emitter and kind of a pollutant on water. But the irony is that private yacht is so big that in order to house the staff and to support that yacht, he also has another 246 square foot yacht that is the support. So he's got a yacht that supports his yacht. And the amount of carbon that comes out of those two monstrosities contributed also to the wedding. But what the statistic they said was that it created over 1,000 tons of carbon for just that one event. And again, this isn't to celebrity shame, but you hear about it all the time. You hear news stories, and I know we've got a lot going on in the world, but there needs to be some repercussions for this. I remember I had heard a story about a celebrity who just wanted to sidestep LA traffic, and they took a private jet from one side of the city to the other. And the amount of carbon that created was just, and it's not fair. It compiles the problem. And the other thing is that it does it quickly, because yes, this one weekend or this 1 week was dedicated to the wedding, but for a fact after that you see people jet setting to other places. That's not just the only thing that they did that summer. You would go to Greece, you would go to Spain, you go to the Bahamas, you fly out to the Philippines. People travel all the time via this avenue, and the amount of carbon that it creates is pretty crazy. So I'm going to continue to look into this. Again, it was kind of neat to chart my own activity. And again, I felt like it was worth it. The more I do it, of course, I will try to do it with more people in the car. Or I might even try to do the calculation to see how much carbon it would be versus driving with one person in the car versus flying on a commercial, a commercial flight, flying coach. How much my one little part of that carbon footprint would be, if it would be less or more than driving. So that's just something to bear in mind. I'm definitely, when I'm at home, my cat Max was so happy that I was home. He was my little sweet shadow when I got back. So I don't think I'm allowed to leave anytime soon. But when I'm at home, it's very short trips. I don't drive far distances. So the other thing is that accumulation of carbon was really kind of probably the maximum that I would ever do for 1 to 3 years at a threshold. You hear a lot in the news about you having carbon credits, meaning that if you use less carbon, you kind of got a surplus of your annual. So maybe me as an individual, but these websites are good to check out. My climate. There's also other websites that you can go to that really, that really calculate your footprint overall. And again, me being an American, I use a lot, but of course, I try to be mindful of my water consumption, of my carbon emissions, and other things as well. But I hope this was informative. If you like what you see here on this channel, I would be very honored if you'd like, comment, and subscribe. And if you get a chance, try to calculate, do a little mental exercise. Okay, how much carbon do I produce when I'm driving? How much carbon did I produce this year approximately? You can kind of run that math in your head and see if it can get better. And then, and of course, I welcome everyone back. I will be posting another video this Sunday, so next week you won't have to wait 2 weeks, so we can get back on track. And we're going to be talking about hobbies. So I look forward to seeing you then, and I'll catch you later. Bye.